A little over a year ago, my wife and I got out of the landlording business, at least for now, and I'm so glad that we did because being a landlord these days means that not only are you fighting rising expenses and dwindling profits, but now you have to worry about if your tenants can even afford to pay the rent because more and more people are starting to miss rent payments because of how expensive everyday living has become. In fact, this has been a growing trend since April of 2023, where on-time rent payments have been falling since then, according to Shandon Economics. Shandon reports that the 3-month moving average of late rent payments for independent rental properties is forecast to be at 11.4% as of July of 2025. In July of 2024, an average of 9.3% of rental payments were late. So that is a 2% increase in just 1 year. That might not sound like a lot, but that translates into millions more people being late on their rent this year versus last year. And obviously nobody should be surprised that that's the case because everything has gotten far too expensive. And to be able to keep up with everything, well, we know people just can't. So they don't pay things that don't have immediate consequences. People stop paying credit card bills. People stop paying the rent. People stop paying medical bills. Anything where you're not going to see an immediate problem for not paying, those are the type of bills that people put off and pay late or don't pay at all. Now, late rent payments tend to decline when people start getting their tax refunds in the spring. However, the late rent payments in May were still more than 2.3 percentage points higher than the same time last year. So consistently throughout 2025, the late rent payments have been up over 2% throughout all of the year so far. Now, Shandon Economics does report that even though more people are behind on the rent, that eventually they do catch up. But that's for now, while they still have a job. And anybody who saw my recent video about the jobs report, you got to be living under a rock not to be able to realize that the job market is in major trouble right now. So if you're a landlord that's lucky enough to have a tenant that still has a job and is still able to pay on time, well, luck certainly is the word for your situation because more and more people are unfortunately not in that situation. Because what's happening with businesses right now is even people that are lucky enough to still have a job, a lot of people are starting to see reduced hours at their job. And for sure, they're seeing slowing wage growth, which is basically wages that have not been able to keep up with inflation. And both of those things are problematic. You know, people are making less money compared to what that money can buy, combined with the fact that you might be getting your hours cut and just not able to work as much. It's not really a good recipe for keeping up with the bills. And across the board, inflation has really impacted everybody because it's not just the rents that people are falling behind on. You have people falling behind on other forms of debt. We even have 4 million student loan borrowers who are on the verge of default right now, not even counting the ones who are already in default. You're seeing mortgage delinquencies rise. You're seeing car loan delinquencies rise. You're seeing credit card delinquencies rise. Now, sometimes I get emails and comments asking me like, hey, Michael, you talk about all these bad things that are happening. People are going broke. They can't pay the rent. They can't pay off their other debts. What is anybody supposed to do about it? And it seems like no matter how many times I talk about the things that you can do about it, people just, I guess, don't hear it, or they need me to say it again. I don't really know, but I will say it again in this video. If you are somebody in this situation, you have to do a couple of things all at the same time. The first thing that you have to do is to stop accumulating any more debt at all. Which means no more credit cards, no more types of loans of any kind. At the same time, you need to be paying down those debts, and simultaneously, you need to be looking for other ways to earn extra income. And obviously, I'm not going to get into the specifics here. This is not a course on how to make a side income in 2025. But that's the formula, guys. However you decide to work that formula is entirely up to you. And I know it's easier said than done, but it is possible because I'm living proof because I was somebody that had to do that like 15 years ago. Sometimes people forget that this isn't the first time we've been in a bad economy. And last time we were in a bad economy, I was a lot younger and I was in this very same position where I could barely pay the rent, where I had debt and I wasn't making enough money to pay the bills because the expenses were too high. And I am not a genius, guys, but I just followed that formula I outlined. Let me show you this real quick. I've never seen this. It looks like they're moving this house or elevating it or something like that. I've never seen this before. Literally a house on blocks. Maybe they're replacing the foundation. I don't know. Sometimes they actually move houses. Naturally, the easiest way to make extra money in 2025 is to turn to the gig economy. A lot of people do DoorDash or Uber or some other type of delivery app like Instacart or TaskRabbit, things like that, guys. Those are things that basically anyone can do. You are going to need a car or some sort of transportation method. In Miami Beach, where I live, for example, I see a lot of people doing DoorDash and Uber Eats on electric bicycles because then they can really save money and don't have the upkeep cost of a vehicle and are able to pocket a little extra profit using that. I chose a different route when I was in this situation rather than pick up a second job because I was working real estate full time back then. I decided to just work longer hours and harder at real estate and make that work, simultaneously having virtually no expenses, no debt payments besides getting out of the debt that I had, just the rent and the basic food and necessities, and that was it. If it wasn't necessary, I didn't pay for it. And after enough years of doing that and being able to get out of debt while simultaneously increasing my income, I was finally able to springboard into a situation where now I'm not living paycheck to paycheck and not living trying to keep up with just paying the bills and trying to just keep your head above water. And once you make it to that point, you can maintain that forever. It's kind of like, somebody who wants to lose weight, for example. Losing the weight is the hardest part. Maintaining your body after you've lost the weight is the easy part. The same thing goes with money, guys. Like if you are having a hard time with money, getting out of the money troubles is the hardest part. Once you're out of it, staying there is easy. As long as you just employ the same discipline that you had that it took to get out of the money troubles and don't make the same mistakes you did in the past. I can guarantee you that anybody right now that's having serious financial troubles is probably living beyond their means. You might not want to admit it, or you might not want to face that fact, face that reality, but that is most likely the case for the vast majority of people. Not everybody, but almost everybody who's having financial troubles is spending more than they should. That spending exceeds their ability to spend that money. And they should be saving a lot more rather than spending it. And the other thing I would really suggest is breaking all of your old bad financial habits, whatever that might be. For some people, it's impulse buying things on Amazon or TikTok, or when they see somebody using something that they really want. This is especially common with women. Or maybe it's just you don't want to cook at home and you love going out to eat all the time and you spend a lot of money on that. Whatever it is, you got to cut it out, and it has to stay cut out permanently. Doesn't mean you can never go out to a restaurant again. It just means keep it down to just 2 or 3 times a month instead of 2 or 3 times a week. Also, I would strongly suggest that if you are a tenant who's having a hard time paying the rent, is you need to talk to your landlord, okay? Explain to them that it's not that you don't want to pay, it's just that you're having a hard time paying, and it must be a legitimate thing. Like, okay, it's not that you're spending $500 a month buying things online that you shouldn't be buying, and that's why you can't afford to pay the rent. It's because you've actually fallen on hard times for whatever reason. Because they're going to be able to tell that you're full of you-know-what if you're faking it. And so there might be a possibility that your landlord will be willing to temporarily lower your rent and let you catch up on the difference later on once you get back up on your feet. So don't be afraid to talk to them. I mean, the worst that can happen is they can say no, guys. That's it.